But you threatened Vanessa, and that is unforgivable.
Listen to me very carefully. In front of this God, I'd rather die as the devil than live as Matt Murdock.
Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin.
I'm the Cholo Nerd.
And this is our theological analysis for Daredevil Season 3. Now this is also kind of our spoiler talk as well. And I'm saying that so you know that this video is jam-packed full of spoilers. Daredevil Season 3 is worth binging. And if you haven't binged it yet, put this video in your watch later list, watch it, and then come back and join us for this awesome conversation, because, man, there is just too much to talk about, and we're definitely not going to be able to cover everything, but there was just so much there between Matt Murdock and his wrestle with God throughout this entire season.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
It was different. I really enjoyed everything, like the storyline and everything about it, and I love the fight with God. And
yes.
Yeah, it was great.
They treated the whole God stuff with reverence, I think.
Yeah.
Because it really showed an honest struggle of somebody struggling with God and then finding their path back and reconciling what's really going on inside of them. My favorite thing, because it kind of helped me kind of put in focus what we're going to talk about, was the very last episode where Matt Murdock is giving the eulogy for Father Lambton. You know, this is where you pointed out earlier that this is where he becomes the man without fear.
Yeah, they kind of referenced, the comic book, it's always Daredevil, the man without fear, and like they actually reference it into the movie, and I really like that because I have a couple of Daredevil comics and old ones, like really old ones, and it's like the man without fear. And I love when they do stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and this was like cool because what it showed was, as you watch this whole show, he deals with a lot of anger. And so it feels like this is a show dealing with anger issues and his anger towards God, his anger towards life, his anger towards everything. But when he's doing this eulogy, you find out it's not anger. He deals with a lot of self-pity.
Yeah.
And you think maybe it's self-pity he had to deal with. But in this eulogy that he gives, he talks about how fear has kept him a prisoner.
Yeah.
For me personally, he spent many years trying to get me to face my own fears. To understand how they enslaved me, how they divided me from the people that I love.
And how Father Lambton showed him what it could be like to be a man without fear, to be bold enough to forgive others, and to be brave enough to confront your fears. Because what you resist persists. You can run, but you can't hide. And so it's interesting that through a series of choices from Matt Murdock, like not dealing with the real root of fear that's in him, his choices brought him to this point where finally he's on his knees and he really has to deal with it.
Yeah, I love it. I love the whole Daredevil series in general. There's always this talk about God and, his struggle. Even in the comic books, Daredevil is Catholic. He's a Catholic on this show, and I love every talk in every season that he has with the priest.
Yes.
And, yeah, this one was probably the best one because he dealt with something, that I feel like every Christian deals with,
Yeah.
They go through this part, they have their self-pity, they're blaming God for everything, and you're upset with God, you're angry at God, you're cursing God, you're doing all the things, and he's no different.
Yeah. When he was a kid, and they had that talk about original sin with him and the priest, which was an amazing talk.
My favorite scene, yeah.
But one of the points that comes out in that talk is he's not hearing God. Like, he has been praying, but he's not hearing God talk back to him. And so then when he's praying in the church, and because of his powers and stuff, and he hears everybody else's prayers, he begins to believe that that is God talking to him. And so he chooses to interpret this as that's his calling, to answer their prayers.
Yeah.
I thought that God let me hear the prayers so that I could answer.
But the truth is, that is way too big of a burden for anyone to bear.
Yeah.
And so for him, it's like he took on the wrong calling.
Yeah.
Like maybe his calling was to be Daredevil and beat up thugs in the street, but the way he interpreted that calling, the way that he took it on himself, no wonder he always feels inferior.
Yeah.
No wonder he thinks he's always losing. And no wonder he always seems to be afraid and can't overcome it because he's given himself an impossible task to answer people's prayers, and that is not his job.
It's not his job. Only God can do that. And it proves it because, there's too much going on. I didn't even catch that the first time I watched it. A lot of times I had to, rewind and listen to what he was saying. And he did. It's not a kid's job anyways to resolve adults' problems.
No.
It's not even most adults' jobs, you know?
Yeah.
God can resolve the problems. And like you said, he was looking for an answer, and sometimes we look the wrong way.
Yes.
We pray for a sign and we grab the wrong sign.
Yes.
And God's like, I haven't given you a sign yet. Like, no, where are you going? Like, and that's exactly what he did. He grabbed the first thing that he thought was a sign. I'm hearing everybody, and I'm going to answer their prayers.
What's really funny about that scene is I got so frustrated because he was on the right track talking about how he was deluded. Like, he was like, I was listening to the prayers and I thought it was my calling to answer their prayers. What a delusion. And I'm like, yes!
Yeah.
He's done it! He's woken up! He's realized what the delusion is!
Oh.
And then he goes,
My delusion was thinking God had anything to do with it. I'm Daredevil. Not even God can stop that now.
I am the Daredevil, and God himself can't even stop that, and so he still takes on the call to answer their prayers because he's so mad at God, and he so can't hear God.
All I ever heard was people in pain, and all he ever gave any of us was silence.
I mean, haven't you done that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I've done that.
Hundreds of times.
Yes, as we're talking to God, we just go through and we reinterpret what he says, and just, we find ourselves in the same cycle again and again.
Yeah. Like, my favorite, talking to was when they were sitting on the steps in the second episode.
The original sin
The
talk.
original sin talk, and how he's upset, he doesn't want to go to catechism because he knows it all, and, sometimes we feel like we know it all at times. And
I do.
Yeah, and it's like, no. But what I liked is how he talks to the priest saying, I talk to God, but he doesn't talk back, and I love his response to that, about praying for a sign, basically, saying...
Burning bush business doesn't happen very often, even in the Bible. He's usually more subtle than that. You want to hear God, Matthew, you have to listen more carefully. Because he speaks in whispers.
What does he do? Instead of looking to hear God's voice, he goes to listen to everybody else's voices. It's like, give me a break.
What's really funny? So you remember the story where Sister Maggie is talking to Karen, and she talks about when Matt was a kid.
Yeah.
And he had these nightmares. So she would rush in when he'd scream for help and hold his hand until he fell asleep.
Oh, yeah.
And then one night, when he called for help, she didn't answer. And from that day forward, he shut her out. And that's what fear does. It shuts people out.
Yeah.
I called for help, and I didn't hear your answer. So he's doing that with Foggy. He's doing that with Karen. And right now, at the beginning of Season 3, he's doing that with God.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at The Defenders and how that ended, he finally got the love of his life back. Then he was willing to die for the love of his life and die with the love of his life. And then he survived.
The city that he loves with his life.
Yes. And then he survives. And as far as we know and he knows, she's dead. So he lost her.
Yeah.
I think she's coming back. But as far as we all know right now, she's dead.
She's not around right now at this moment.
So he's lost her.
Yeah.
He wakes up with his sinuses all filled with ash and blood and swollen. So he's lost his powers. So he feels like he's lost his identity and he's lost his love.
Yeah.
So he's crying out for help and he hears nothing. So what does he do? He shuts God out.
And tries to kill himself.
Then he tries to kill himself. But what's interesting is he compares himself to Job. Yeah. Because Job was God's soldier. And Job was God's man and his best man. And God kills Job's family. God kills Job's friends. It was the devil who did it. But it's amazing how when we're in pain...
People take that scripture, like you said, like we were talking earlier, so like that scripture gets taken out of context all the time.
All the time.
God is the one who's doing all that bad things to Job.
Yeah. And that's what he did.
Yeah.
Took it totally out of context, and now he's cutting himself off from his friends because, well, to smite him, God will kill his friends now. To smite him, God will kill those that are closest to him.
Anybody he loves is going to die in his head.
So in his head, I know God's true face, and I now know where I stand with him. But I think the funny thing is, he's comparing himself to Job in his self-pity, but I think he's more like Elijah. Because remember, Elijah calls fire down from heaven, and the very next day, Jezebel says, I'm going to kill you. And so he runs, he gets into self-pity, he begs for God to kill him, the way Daredevil at the end of episode 1 was begging for those thugs to kill him. He begs for God to kill him. God leads
blind man.
Elijah to the wilderness, and then there's these signs. There's this mighty wind, but God wasn't in the wind. There's this big earthquake, God wasn't in the earthquake. But then there's this still small whisper, and God is in that, which is exactly what the Father was saying on the steps to young Matthew. He's like, look, the miracles and stuff like that are rare.
Yeah.
But God speaks in a whisper, and you need to learn to lean in and quiet yourself and listen to the whisper.
Yeah.
And Matt has called for help and felt like he didn't hear it, so he's cut God out.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
yeah.
I like to think of it as both Elijah and Job.
Yeah.
I feel like the Daredevil season 3 is like the modern story of Job. He lost it all. He's facing the biggest tribulations of his life. And at the end, everything that was taken from him and stolen from him, God restored even more.
Yes.
He has a stronger relationship with his friends. He knows his friends not only just love him to death, but Foggy wouldn't. He fought behind the scenes for him because why? He didn't want him to kill Kingpin. If he killed him, even though the Kingpin is totally a bad person, needs to be killed type of thing, you know, like he just keeps coming back. He's poison to the city, blah, blah, blah. But he knows even someone of that kind of caliber, if he killed him, even that bad person, that he still wouldn't come back from it, you know?
Yeah.
So he has a stronger relationship with his friends. His house's bills have been paid for. Like, his house is still there. Like, he everything. And then the one thing that I loved about them was restored perfectly. Nelson and Murdock.
And Paige.
And Paige.
So the business got better.
The business-
It was better than when it all fell apart.
Yeah. The business got better. Everything was restored.
Yeah.
And life's great. You know what I mean? Like,
So
that's
it
what I
really
love.
is like a modern Job.
Like a
Like
modern
Job
Job.
lost everything and everything was restored to him at the end sevenfold. Like everybody loves, like Christians, when they tell the story of Job, they love to forget where it's a story of blessing.
Yeah.
Because as much as Job lost everything, in the end, God restored everything to him sevenfold. And now we look at this modern tale of the Daredevil. Through 3 seasons, he lost his partner, he lost all this, and then finally in season 3, he loses everything.
loses
And
it.
the last episode, it's not only all back, but like sevenfold better than what it was before.
And they are all more blessed because of it. Paige, total freedom.
Yep.
She's been hiding the burden of killing James Wesley.
Yes, and now she's free of that burden.
Even though she shouldn't feel guilty, she's in a hostage situation. She saved her own life. She talked about her brother.
Yes.
She was free in that. She was feeling guilty because everybody around her was dying as well. She had every right, you know, because she went after the Kingpin, and what does he do? He kills everybody. Daredevil's having the same struggle.
Yeah.
He was free to the same things. Foggy was restored with his family, the family business, you know, making sure his parents were taken care of. Like, everything came around, and because of it, everybody was blessed and whole.
Yeah.
Like, everything was restored plus more, like sevenfold, like you're saying.
That's a really good interpretation of that, and I didn't even see that until
Yeah,
just
well,
now.
I didn't either until we started talking. Yeah.
Something else that was really interesting, going back to God talking in the whispers, because what's really interesting when you watch this show, like, so when Matt Murdock is in the heart of his story, like when we're in the heart of things and we're mad at the world, we are often so mad at God, we're so mad at ourselves, and we're so mad at everybody, we don't see how God is working and still using us even when we're cursing him.
In the background, things are still going on.
Because Matt was mad at God and wanted to kill himself. So when he went out to kill himself, what happened is it turned out he was in the right place at the right time, where he saved the guy who Wilson Fisk bought the hotel from, and he's trying to get it back, so they're trying to kill him for trying to get it back.
Yeah.
And Matt was positioned to be in the right place at the right time to save that guy. Matt thought it was God punishing him for trying to kill himself when his hearing was restored, and the first thing he hears is Fisk is out of prison and is in a, penthouse suite, and he thought that was God's punishment towards him. But really, God was positioning him to be in the right place at the right time to, bring down the big baddie in the right way. And as you go through the show, you can keep finding things like that where, even...
he just took it the wrong way.
He took it the wrong way. But even the daughter in the hospital room where her dad's in a coma, she's like, thank God for you. He goes, God didn't do it. I did. And it's like, well, hold on, man. You went out with the intent to kill yourself, and you happen to save the right person that is crucial to the plot of all of this.
Yeah.
That's not convenient script writing. That is truly the providence of God working in the Daredevil's life, even in this story.
Yeah.
So even when Daredevil was set against God and mad at God, God didn't forget him or abandon him, and was still positioning him to be in the right places at the right time.
Because who knows our heart better than God?
Who knows our heart better than God? And then, okay, Fisk in the what did you think of that in the mind of Daredevil? Not the real Fisk, but the Fisk in Daredevil's head.
I loved it. It was like, like in the cartoons you have the angel and the devil.
Yes.
And he's just in the background just feeding him, and everything that he was thinking, like the Daredevil was thinking, Fisk was just saying it, and just everything, like you said, like the wrong interpretation of why he was there and why he heard this, and he was being punishing him and he's egging him on. And
God restored your hearing just in time to hear my name chanted by the crowds. Just in time to learn in the long run. I won. You lost.
But it's interesting because to me it sounds like the devil. When you give yourself over to self-pity, it's amazing how the devil gets into our mind as the accuser.
Yeah.
Because he's sitting there and this is Matt's imagination, but it's the accuser speaking through that imagination. Hey, you let me live. Because you've let me live, everybody that's died is on you. Oh, but you don't have the guts to kill me. Yeah. You don't have the guts to do it. And so the scenes where the devil is playing devil's advocate even to himself.
Yeah.
And he's like, the only thing you can do is kill me, but you're too weak to kill me. Everybody who's dead is on you, and because he's given himself over to that self-pity, it's like he's given that voice credence in his life, and that voice is just totally splitting his mind.
And the way he does it, it's not even like a challenge. It's saying, like, he's telling him he can't do it. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm teasing you. He's letting you know you cannot kill me. Like, then it just gets you mad even worse. It's like you take a beating, and someone's not just mocking you, but letting you know you can never defeat me, And, and that's exactly what's going on in his head. And he's just like, it's just so much stronger the way the way Kingpin presents it. It's not a taunt, it's a fact.
Yeah,
because everything he's saying is true. More people are going to die because Kingpin's still alive.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's on Matt Murdock.
It's not his fault. He made his own plans. Yeah. He had a thing.
And it's amazing how much this all goes back to what the Father was saying on the steps about original sin and free will. Matt Murdock has his choices, and that's why he needs to pray, so God could guide him to make the right choices. Yes. He is not responsible for the choices that Wilson Fisk make. And also, he's not the judge, jury, and executioner.
Nope.
And I like something you said earlier before we started rolling the cameras about Foggy Nelson. Kind of was the conscience to Matt, because it's why he couldn't kill Kingpin at the very end of this. Because Foggy was working so hard to be like, you can't come back from that if you do that. And it's another reason him cutting his friends out was bad.
Yeah.
Because when he cut his friends out and made himself believe he was an island and believe he was alone, he would have been consumed by his self-pity. He would have crossed a line that he could never have returned from in his own conscience. He would have gone all the way. But because he let his friends in, because he quit being an island, they were able to help him and bring him back. And
restore everything.
Yes. Which is, there's no moment where he falls on his knees and repents fully to God, right?
Yeah.
But by the end of this, you see he's like reconciled back to God, and you can see it's symbolized in the fact that he's let his friends in. Yeah. That he stopped pushing them out, and he had to humble himself, even after stealing Foggy's identity, had to humble himself and let his friends have their wisdom in his life.
Man, I hope he pays Foggy back. He took a lot of cash from him.
He took a lot of cash, took his identity, broke into a prison, beat up all these thugs. I mean, that was not cool what he did to Foggy at all.
I hope he pays him back.
Coolest hallway fight, though. One-shot hallway fight. I love their hallway fights.
Every year, the Netflix, Marvel series, they always have the hallway fights. And I love every one of Daredevil's hallway fights. They're just great.
They are awesome.
The prison one, I did not see it coming, too. When, I thought he was just going to leave, the nurse, when the nurse is like, here, you got to sign this document or whatever. I thought he was just going to leave that. And I thought he was going to run into somebody and someone was going to, taunt him or give him a message from Fisk knowing. But I didn't think the nurse was going to turn around and try to kill him. And
instead, it became the longest hallway fight scene there was.
And it's like, oh, crap, I really thought there was a message that was going to be sent to him that was going to play with his head.
Yep.
And maybe make him make the wrong move. I didn't think he was going to be attacked by the prison.
Yeah.
But it worked out because then he got to the Albanians.
Yes. All in one freaking shot. It was just, I loved it. Anyway, yeah. And then, okay, so now that we're on fight scenes, the church fight.
Yeah, that was great.
And the amazing thing there was we got to see Father Lambton fearless.
Yeah.
Dying for Karen Page.
He showed what a man without fear. Not only did he preach it, he lived it.
Yes. And it's funny because the whole show is Karen and all her sins struggling to come out of it and do good. Feeling like she could never be there, but trying to get out of there. Matt feeling like he can never be there, but struggling to do good. And then you have Father Lambton and Sister Maggie, who are pictures of holiness. And Sister Maggie, out of fear, lied to her son all of his life. And Father Lambton honored her lie and was part of it. So they too were sinners.
Yeah.
And so it's like all the characters are struggling with their sins and their choices, but struggling to hear God and continue to stay on the right path in spite of their mistakes.
Yeah. And it shows you, what happens when you lean on your own understanding,
Yes.
When you focus on your sin, you magnify the sin versus the solution.
Exactly.
And that was like a big example in all their lives. They were so focused on all their wrongs.
Yep.
They couldn't see past it.
And then Bullseye was the picture of succumbing to that, because he focused on all of his wrongs and then tried to make human beings his North Star, which opened him up to be utterly taken advantage of and manipulated by Wilson Fisk, the real devil of this story.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing parallel, because to me, when we're watching Bullseye in this, what was so interesting about his character was he walked a very parallel path to Matt Murdock, very similar skills and everything. And was walking a very parallel path, but he literally had no God and didn't just lean on his own understanding, but rather than looking to an incorruptible God to be his North Star, he kept looking to Julia. Yeah. He kept looking to his therapist.
Poor Julia.
Oh,
she was so innocent in all this.
Yes!
All she did is take a job as a waitress.
That's all she did.
Just to pay some bills.
Oh,
and
I
she
really
was a
feel bad for
frozen
her.
popsicle.
Yes.
And that was gross when he brought her along with the ride.
Oh, gosh. Which shows you the deepness of the web. And you were talking about this as we were putting the video together about Wilson Fisk's web.
Agent Nadim, desperate, poured all his money into his sister-in-law, to help pay for all her cancer treatments. And because of it, she was cancer-free. And they were celebrating, but he was in major debt. They had no money. And then you see his side of it. He goes to work. They're not willing to promote him because of the debt he created, going to a good cause, helping his sister-in-law out, which is phenomenal. But the FBI's like, no, you have too much debt. There's a policy in place. We can't give you a promotion, and he needs it. And so he's like in this sad, lonely, as a man, like he's like, I can't provide for my family. I've bent over backwards. I'm doing all this, and it's just not enough.
Yeah.
He's in this vulnerable state. And Wilson Fisk makes him an offer.
Comes as an angel of light.
Yep. And what happened? Something that was he was thinking, okay, he gives me a couple things, we get him in this penthouse or whatever. I'm good. Nope. Fisk had other plans.
Yeah.
He was already pulling on one person and on another one, and they was just all coming together.
Yep.
And
that was like the master manipulator right there. And it was just... That's what it is. The devil came as an angel of light with an offer he couldn't refuse, and he just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
Man, there's so much to read into this season. So
you can go for hours.
Oh, gosh. So I guess we shouldn't go for hours, but I could.
Yeah.
All right, so now it's up to you guys. How much further do you want to go this? What symbolism is in this show that we missed that you want to talk about? Let's do that in the comments as we wrap it up. What are your final thoughts? I gave it an A+ in my spoiler-free review. What would you give this season?
I would definitely give it an A+. I love it from every episode. The only thing I didn't like is some of the little storylines were a little long, with Karen Page and, Bullseye, but it still wasn't bad.
They did a good job overall with it.
Yeah, I was totally impressed. Every season seems to get better.
Yes, and I agree. So season 4 has a lot of responsibility if they make one. There's a lot of responsibility there. Yeah.
And I can go on all about that too, but no, we're not going to.
No. All right, Daredevil season 3. What was some of your favorite stuff about the season? What's your favorite Daredevil season? Let's talk about that in the comments. While you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for our next theological analysis, movie review, ranking video, trailer reaction, or anything else we do here. I'm Durbin.
I'm the Cholo Nerd.
Thanks for checking out Durbania.